Hey everybody, Maimang Technology reached out to me, sent their crimp tool, and for the purpose of this review. This is a paid review, and I want to make that extremely clear, but I'm going to be extremely transparent on what I feel about this tool and the terminal assortment box that it comes with. Now, if you're like me, you heavily rely on these sort of inexpensive options for tools. If you've seen my previous soldering review videos, or have seen other videos on my channel where I'm constantly using capacitor kits, like boxes, these are really inexpensive options to, say, going to the big box retailer and spending a ton of money. So tools like this are extremely valuable for people on a budget, and maybe not going to use this tool every single day, but when they need it, it's there. And I think this is a great example of that. We'll start with the crimp tool. Comes out super easy. It's got good weight to it, and as you can see, when you close the jaws, this goes in like that and closes. That's the crimp action. And then if you kind of just release it right there, it locks on its own. It's pretty slick. So yeah, that's definitely got a lot of weight to it. Compared to like a conventional pair of wire cutters, these are they're probably 3-4 times the weight of that. Very substantial feeling. Here's the box, not much to it. Instruction manual is somewhat helpful because it also has the wire connector information on it in case you lose this one. And it also goes over instructions on how to actually use it in a few languages, which is nice. Now I'll get into the terminal assortment itself. As you can see, everything is extremely well laid out. So we have 22 gauge, 20 gauge, 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, and 7. And once again, it's all color coordinated. Couldn't be laid out nicer. So here's a 12 gauge wire that I have here. As you can see, I already got one side done, but I'll show you how this is accomplished. So you take the crimping piece, terminal, you insert it over the wire. Now you want this plastic end to actually go over the wire sheath. You don't want it to be like this per se, right? You want it completely covered, and you want the wire to be through the actual part that we crimp. And you grab the crimping tool, and you just press it, and it opens right up. Then we insert it, get everything aligned, and then press down. And that's it. And you release, you have a perfect crimped connection. And let me tell you, that is extremely well on there. Before I did this one, I wanted to see if I could pull it off, and I could not pull this out. I tried really hard. I tried with pliers. It wouldn't come off. The only way you're going to get that off is if you snip this wire. So that is a really firm connection. I'll continue, and this is 18 gauge wire. So you have a small piece of wire here. 18 gauge, I'll grab it. As you can tell right from here, the diagram is very simply laid out, and also it correlates directly to how it's in the packaging. So 18 gauge is right here. So once again, I'll put this over. As you can tell, the wire is going through. Insulation is covering the wire. And we take our crimp tool. If it was pressed in, you just press and release it. Insert, make sure everything is lined up. Crimps right down. And it's perfectly crimps. I haven't had one miscrimp with this tool, so to be honest, I'm kind of impressed. Even with my trusty tool that I have, more of a manual crimp, right? Like this tool, this thing is a pain in the butt compared to this. This works actually really well, and it's more substantial. These are kind of really just difficult to use. You use this part right here to crimp, and it just doesn't work every time that you want to. Now here's even thinner wire. Mainly with stuff that I do, I usually work with thinner gauge wire. So stuff like 22 gauge, 20 gauge, and 18 gauge is really up my wheelhouse. So here we'll try the 20 gauge. So that inserts through. So now the wires are in here, the part that you're going to crimp, and this terminal insulation part is over the wire. We'll open up, insert, make sure everything's aligned, crimp down, crimps really easily, one-handed, and there you go. Everything is really good. That's a very clean crimp. I hope that's coming through on camera, but I don't know if it is, but that's extremely clean. Some of you might be wondering, how can you implement a tool like this into vintage audio repair? And this is something that I've actually done a few times, and will certainly come in handy in the future. So just say, I don't know, in the power amp section of your amplifier, right, like 2 wires came undone, and they're a little hard to get to. And everyone knows when the wire leads are fairly long, you can always twist them together, right, and then add some solder and add heat shrink over it, and you have a pretty solid connection. But sometimes the wires are a little bit harder to get to, and this sort of opens up a few options of what is possible. You can take appropriate sized terminal, put it over the wire, and put both leads into it. And now when you crimp down, you have a pretty substantial grasp right there. And that's really great for, you know, a quick solution, if especially if you're in tight quarters. As long as you can get this tool down there and crimp it, you're good to go. So I'll grab this, and I'll actually add some solder to this exposed wire portion here that will go onto the terminal. So not only now is it soldered together, it's crimped together, and then of course we'll add some heat shrink to it as well. So that's just one example of the many uses of a tool like this and a terminal set like this. You can attach wires in different ways, right? You can use maybe one end to crimp 2 wires, or join 3 or 4 wires together. You can use 2 crimps at the same time. You can use 2 terminals on different ends of the wire, right? And crimp the actual terminal inside one another, like this. You know, there's just a lot of options for a tool like this, and having something like this around will certainly just add to your arsenal of tools and ways of finding solutions for problems. That's what I've mainly been using this tool for in the workshop on all the audio equipment. And sure, sometimes twisting wires together is good enough, but sometimes it's just good to have a backup option. It really just, you know, expands your arsenal, like I said, and just gives you other ways of finding solutions for problems. I can actually attest to this this method right here. So a lot of times I'm doing point-to-point wiring, whether that's just, you know, small wires that just broke, or, you know, in a tone arm, or even like putting a new power cable on. A lot of times I like to solder wires together for whatever the reason may be. Here's the trick. So basically you'll take a wire, 2 of these that are crimped, just position them okay. And I'm obviously not going for any artistic awards here, but trust me, this is just a lifesaver, especially working with smaller wire. But I'm using big wire just for the purpose of demonstration. So I add a bunch of solder here, let it cure, take a piece of heat shrink, put it right over, and once I heat that up, that's going to look really great. Now, as you can tell, that is a extremely reliable connection right here. The crimping tool, it's substantial. It's going to hold up. I can't really see this breaking in a way. There's not that many moving parts, and anything that's spring driven right here, the spring is extremely substantial, and over time you might just have to lubricate this part that's constantly moving. But seriously, I mean, that's a low maintenance tool, especially if you're only using it every once in a while. A tool this substantial, this weighty, will hold up. These connections, you're not going to go through 1200. I mean, I know for me, I'm not using the 7 gauges as much, but they kind of like know that they're only putting 25 and 50, 250 for the blue, which are obviously the most common. That's what I've been using mainly. So here's what your sort of final results will look like. This is a great tool. It's very inexpensive, a very nice company. Once again, they did reach out to me to make this review. And, you know, I obviously am giving it my honest opinion. The proof is right here. Kind of if the tool sucks, the end result will suck. And this is a substantial wire connection right here. It's not going to break. You can use, you can wrap a wire as many times as you want and solder it as much as you want, but it will not be as strong as this. Not to mention using these terminals for their recommended uses, right, in automotive industry and all the other electrical uses for these connectors. But this is what I use them for. They work great for that. The tool is substantial and will last. And yeah, so if anyone has any questions on this crimp tool, let me know. The company has been very nice and you know, extremely easy to work with. So the link for their product should be in the description down below. So yeah. All right. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.